The DNA Diaries, a page 256 library publication, a book authored by Denny Roberts Ameke, and read to you by Charlotte Mugisha. Story1.
Cloning and the Future. Chapter 11. Family Bridges. Blood unites, but it also divides. Sometimes the bridge is a bond, sometimes it's a battlefield. End quote. Patricia Naroga. The journey to Bulindo felt longer than it actually was, maybe because of the silence in the car or the way Keon stared out of the window, watching every tree and boda rider as if memorizing their patterns. Helen hadn't told him much, just that they were going to see his siblings and grandmother. But even at 7, Keon had already learned how to listen beyond words. The car slowed down as they turned into her mother's compound. The house, painted green, stood behind the same old jackfruit tree where the children had once hung a rope for swinging themselves. Her mother's voice was the first thing she heard, loud and commanding as always, instructing someone to sweep the compound properly. But it stopped the moment she saw the car. And then the children came running. The door hadn't fully opened when Keon's eldest sister busted through the corridor, followed closely by her brother and youngest sister, all of them wide-eyed, barefoot, and trembling with the kind of joy that had been buried under months of waiting. "Mommy!" they shouted in unison. Helen barely had time to catch her breath as they threw their arms around her. Tears flowed freely from them, from her mother who stood at the door pressing her hand over her mouth. Then slowly Helen turned and held Keon's hand. "This is your brother," she said, voice thick with emotion. "This is Keon." There was a pause, the kind that stretches too long. The children stared at Keon, unsure whether to run to him or remain still. Keon tilted his head slightly and said quietly, "I remember all your names." That broke the ice. They surrounded him, touching his hands, asking questions. "How old are you now? Do you eat beans and matoke? Can you swim?" Like he was both a brother and a stranger they had read about in stories, but not everyone was at ease. The eldest boy, 11 now and sharp-eyed, stayed back. He watched his brother with a mixture of awe and something else, suspicion. Later, when the others were distracted, he pulled close to Helen and asked, "He doesn't blink normally and doesn't smile easily. Is he still sick?" Helen didn't know what to say because it was the truth, but she simply said, "He is okay." The Village Whispers. In Bulindo, word about Helen's visit and about the boy spread fast. By the 3rd day, neighbors were already stopping at the gate pretending to greet her mother but leaning to peep inside the house. "Is that the child they're talking about?" one asked. "Banange," they said. "He speaks like a grown man." "I heard he calculates things without counting," one neighbor said. Children from nearby homes came peeping through the fence just to watch Keon sit in the garden, drawing silently in his notebook. Some said he could hear what chickens were thinking. Others believed he was a gift from God, and a few whispered that he wasn't a child at all. By the 5th day, the boda riders in Bulindo were heard arguing about the boy, telling everyone who cared to ask what the wonder kid is capable of doing. One shouted, "Katonda has given Bulindo a human AI." One evening, Helen found her mother seated outside in the dark, fingers folded in prayer. "My daughter," she called, "this village loves rumors. If you don't take the boy away soon, they will stop calling him gifted and will start calling him cursed." That night, Helen packed their bags. Naomi hadn't been the same since her visit to Muyenga. She had returned to Makindye quiet, distracted, spending hours tracing invisible lines on the wall or sitting cross-legged, murmuring tones her mother didn't recognize. At first, Lydia thought it was just a phase, something emotional, perhaps the lingering effects of their visit. But then Naomi began murmuring numbers in her sleep as well. Long strings of them, and then came the drawings, much more than before. At first just shapes and then the spirals. One morning, she drew a map of a place they had never been to, a hilltop with tall trees and a house with 12 windows. Keon said I should remember it, Naomi mumbled, handing the paper to her mother. Lydia didn't know whether to be angry, afraid, or call a priest. Instead, she called Helen. Helen didn't wait. The moment she returned from Bulindo, she called Lydia to bring her. Naomi arrived 2 days later, wearing the same white dress she had worn the first time, only this time her eyes looked different. Not wide with curiosity, but narrowed, focused, like someone watching their own reflection stretch into a shadow. Keon met her at the doorway. They didn't say anything, just nodded at each other and sat down at the same spot on the mat where they had drawn last time. No words, just sketches. At some point, Helen peeped over their shoulders and saw what they were working on. This time they were not only drawing spirals, but also interlocking sequences. Keon drawing one side, Naomi the other, their pencils moving as if guided by the same thought. And in the center of the page was a name, Okumu. Helen's stomach turned. She hadn't spoken or thought about that name since the Nairobi incident. The night of questions. That night Keon didn't sleep again. Helen found him at the same spot, next to the window staring up at the stars. "She's remembering more," he said without looking at her. "Do you remember too?" He nodded. "Pieces, but they are somehow locked." "What is she to you?" Helen asked softly. "She's the bridge," he replied, "between what I am and what they tried to make." Helen knelt beside him. "And what are you, Keon?" He turned, eyes dark and steady. "I'm the question they hadn't answered." Before Helen could say anything, he moved slowly into his bed and covered himself.